Hi everyone, it's Pete here from the Pain Toolkit. Hope everybody's well. We're at the moment it's on a Monday night and we're preparing ourselves for the beast from the east. Apparently a massive ton of snow coming our way from our friends over in Russia. I'd like to, I'm doing an interview for me in the UK, it's evening, but in the US it's daytime for Jo. And I'm going to do a nice interview with Jo Belton from Denver. Hello there, Jo. And thanks very much for volunteering or agreeing to do an interview with me. You want to say hello to everyone?
Pardon me?
You want to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. And I'm so happy to be here. It's always good to talk with you, Pete.
Fantastic.
And this time technology is working for me, so that makes me happy.
Yeah. We have tried this before, but that was on the Facebook stuff. This is a bit more reliable. So, Jo, you're like, as we've got to know each other via social media over the years, is like, I see you're very much like the female equivalent to me, really, to what you're doing over there in the US around promoting pain self-management for others. But I thought it would be interesting if viewers could, if you could just tell viewers a little bit about your pain journey, perhaps. And then we'll go on to how you self-manage and then talk about little projects that are involved. So I'll leave it over to you.
Sounds good. And what a high compliment to call me the female version of Pete Moore over in the US. I hope to attain that status and do it justice at some time that we have the reach that you have over there. But my pain journey started back in January of 2010 during the course of my work as a firefighter paramedic in Southern California.
Yeah.
And I just stepped off the fire engine awkwardly on a routine call, something I had done literally thousands of times, and just felt a twinge in my hip. I didn't think much of it at the time. Didn't do anything about it for a couple of weeks, but it became kind of a nagging thing that became a little more concerning, and went and got checked out by our occupational doctor. And that kind of got me into the system, our workers' compensation system in Southern California. And I went to physical therapy and was still at work, working full time during this, but my pain kept getting worse in my hip. It wasn't getting better. And after about 5 months, I ended up going off work altogether. I was really losing function at that time where I couldn't step up onto the fire engine. So I realized that I was becoming a hazard to my crew, to the public, to myself, and needed to go off work. And then that led to even more kind of being in the system, the workers' compensation system, which was a very stressful experience. It's a system that makes you feel like you're investigated before you're believed, and that delays care while they're doing that investigation. So I went at one point, I think 5 months without receiving any treatment whatsoever. Eventually I saw an orthopedic specialist, and I went through a course of injections that didn't work, and that was done by another orthopedic specialist. And then I was referred to a hip specialist, an orthopedic surgeon, in the latter part of 2010. And he recommended surgery and gave me a diagnosis, which I hadn't had up until that point, of femoral acetabular impingement. So he recommended surgery, and then it was another 3 months of a review. So finally in March of 2011, so 13 months or so after that initial twinge, I had surgery for my hip. At that time, so I had been a firefighter paramedic before all this happened. I was really strong. I was in, the peak physical fitness of my life, and felt really confident and competent. And over those 13 months, everything changed. I began to feel really frail and weak and broken. And I lost almost 30 pounds of lean muscle mass. And so I had never been that small in my adult life. My mom had actually looked at my medical records, and I hadn't weighed what I weighed around the time of my surgery since I was in 4th grade. So it was like a huge fall from when I left work to that surgery. And I had such high hopes for that surgery, that it was going to fix me, that my pain was going to be gone. I knew that I would go through some rehab and all of that, but was super confident that the surgery was going to work and that I was going to be back to work as a firefighter. And that didn't happen. Hit physical therapy hard again after my surgery, perhaps a little too hard in looking back in retrospect. But after, a few months of physical therapy, after the course of the surgery should have healed and I should have been okay, my pain had gotten worse from the time of the surgery on. So then I was back in that same loop of searching for the next thing that was going to help me with the pain. And it was a very biomedical system, a very biomedical model that I was in, that because the pain was in my hip, that meant that there had to be something wrong in the hip. And that was the notion that I was working within that entire time too. I felt like if my pain was persisting, that meant that there still had to be something wrong in there, that there still had to be damage in there, or that I had, after my surgery, that I had messed up my surgery. And that became debilitating. When every step hurts and you think that hurt equals damage, you feel like you're harming yourself every time you move. And things that used to be really easy become really difficult and really worrying and concerning. And your life just becomes really, really small. So at that time, my life just became, confined to my house because I couldn't travel. Sitting was the most difficult thing for me. It was the most painful thing for me. I withdrew from all my friends, from my family, and I felt really lost because not being a firefighter anymore. And after the surgery, when it was evident that I wasn't going to improve, I couldn't go back. So ended up having to medically retire from the career that had defined me. And that was probably the most difficult part for me because I had attached all of my worth to my job, to my profession. And so not having that anymore, I really lost my sense of self-worth, my sense of who I was as a person. And it just was a really dark few years when I was working within that system and within that kind of strictly biomedical model.
Jo, what would you think was the turning point from where you was in that really dark days to what was the catalyst that helped move from you from being where you were to self-managing?
For me, it was going back to school. So after I had medically retired, I decided to go back to graduate school and study human movement because I had very biomechanical notions of my pain, that I felt like I had to be moving wrong or sitting wrong or doing something wrong that was continuing to damage my hip, which was continuing to lead to pain. So I went back to graduate school and I started studying pain science and learned that pain was much more complex than I had understood, that it wasn't just something that was going on in the tissues in my hip, that it was this biopsychosocial phenomena and that a lot of things contribute to pain. But the most empowering thing for me to learn was that pain doesn't equate to damage, that it's not a one-to-one relationship. So learning that, I felt like I could start doing things again without so much fear and so much concern about the pain. That, because even really throughout all those years, like I can tolerate pain. It was what I thought the pain meant that was so disabling. Because I meant that it thought that I couldn't do, or it meant to me that I couldn't do things, that it was dangerous to do things, that it would make things worse if I did things. So understanding that wasn't the case, and that movement, and that, getting back to the things that were meaningful to me and the things that I valued would probably actually help, was a huge turning point for me. I had the great fortune of interviewing Professor Lorimer Mosley during my schoolwork, and I grilled him for 45 minutes during that interview on the science of pain. And in the last, few minutes of the talk, I asked, what is the one thing you would want people in chronic pain to know? Like, thinking he'd have this massive insight that would be very, based in the science as to how to change pain. And his response was to love and be loved. And it floored me. and really helped me make that transition from having my whole life be centered around focusing on my pain and being rid of it, to having my life focused on the things that I loved and that were valuable and meaningful to me, and getting back to the activities that I enjoyed and the experiences that I had been missing out on and the people that I had disconnected from, and being able to reconnect with those things, getting back outside and into nature, which was a huge one for me, and taking pictures that I know you've seen
Yeah,
on
brilliant. That's
Instagram.
fantastic.
And nature photography was such a wonderful activity for me to get into, because not only did it get me outside, it literally had me seeing the world again through a different lens, and it really helped me focus on finding the beauty and the interestingness in the world again, and getting curious again, and just being active. To take pictures of nature, you have to get out into nature. So that was a huge starting point for me, and starting to live my life again, be active again, and kind of accidentally finding self-management. Like, it wasn't my intended plan. Like, it wasn't something that was ever presented to me as an option. I just started doing it, and my pain started to get better, and my life started to get bigger. And then that just kind of snowballed into doing more and more things, reconnecting with more people, and getting back to things I really never thought I would do again, like snowboarding. And in the last, couple of years, I've tried running again. Only in the last year have I been successful at it. But I just, in the words of Bronnie Lennox Thompson, she says, you have to be flexibly persistent. And so, and that's what I've been. I've just kept persisting. And of course, there was flare-ups and times that I was kind of down for the count. So that's where that flexibility comes in, not beating yourself up when that happens, and knowing that things are going to change, that everything is kind of impermanent, and there'll be other opportunities down the line to persist in those activities that you enjoy.
I think Bronnie's right. It's we have to be like the willow tree, like a willow tree in the wind. We have to the bend, when wind comes along, instead of thinking, well, instead of resist it, just go with it and it will come.
Yeah.
So it's about being flexible, but having that tenacity, not tenacity, probably a wrong word, but don't give up.
Yes, don't give up.
I think that's a message. And I always say to other people, if I can do it, you can do it, and because I'm not an academic guy, I'm not a school guy, I'll just pick up things along the way. And but if I can do it, I know everybody else can do it as well, whether you. So I'm not from an academic, I come from a street market family, as my upbringing as a child, and the only other two skills are, I trained in is either being a painter, a decorator, and a drive instructor. So very far removed from what we do now.
Well, and isn't that interesting too, that we've come to very similar points from two different backgrounds, and I think that speaks to the value of these things and what we're saying. And I love the willow tree example. I'm going to start using that because it speaks to me, because it's nature, but also it's so true. I'm gonna borrow that, Pete.
Listen, I don't. You listen, it don't matter. Just take it. I tell you what, I've been really interested in watching you, because it is, in a way, I stand back. I know when we first connected, and you telling me about the projects that you were doing, and I remember sending you lots of information, and I think, oh God, I know I'm sending too much. Because I'm an A-type personality. I've got it's all or nothing sort of thing, But I was interested. I tell the viewers a bit about the project that you're doing, specifically a pain management program for women.
Yeah, well, and actually, we're expanding to beyond just women too. We're going to be doing some stuff for first responders this year, and expanding our programming. But I co-founded with my friend Beth in 2016 a nonprofit organization called the Endless Possibilities Initiative, or we call it EPIC. because epic just sounds cool. So
I
we
think,
got
I,
we
I
got
think,
the
I
letters
think,
to make it
I
epic.
but
Sorry,
I think Endless Possibilities is a great title.
almost dropped my computer there.
Because in pain management, the possibilities are endless.
Yes, yes, and that was why we named it that, because so my co-founder Beth is paraplegic. So she broke her back jumping into the Colorado River over 6 years ago now, and she's had pain from the time of her injury on, from the level of her injury down. So she has no other sensation and no movement in her lower body other than pain is the only thing that she can feel there. And when we first met, she had just had another surgery that was supposed to fix her pain, 100% certain she was a poster child for it. It's called dorsal root entry zone lesioning, and it didn't work. So after that surgery, and she knew going into it that she was going to become more paralyzed as a result of the surgery, but it was a trade-off that she was willing to make, thinking that she was going to be pain-free at the end of it. But that didn't happen, and she was in that dark place that we were talking about that I had been in years before, and had kind of given up hope because that was the last presented opportunity for her. She'd done all the surgeries, all the medications that traditional biomedical model had to offer, and she was never told how to self-manage or any of these other things that might help her. So I met her through a development coach through the National Sports Center for the Disabled, where she is an athlete and I'm a volunteer. She's actually now a volunteer coach now too. And we just started talking about some of this stuff. I started talking about, what I had learned about pain and its complexity, and that there's more to it than we typically think, and all of those kind of psychosocial factors that can contribute to pain, and some of the strategies that had helped me, and why they were important and why they kind of work. And we started just working very informally together. And her pain started to change. And it was the first time in her entire experience that her pain levels actually modulated, that they would go down, they'd go back up, but it was the first time that they had ever started to go down. So we thought, hey, we're onto something. But the whole time she was like, why has nobody told me any of this stuff before? Why have I been in the system for this long and no one's ever mentioned any of this to me before? And I remember thinking all of that when I was in school. Like, I would read something and be like, why has nobody told me any of this before? So we wanted to start a way of getting that information to more people. And particularly when we first started, we were geared towards women. We wanted to empower women living with pain to live well. So we started, we had this idea that we would do retreats where women would come up into the mountains and they would learn more about pain. And then also the main emphasis was going to be on living well strategies and how they could be empowered with new knowledge, new skills, new resources to move forward and live a better life, whether pain improved or not. And we did our first retreat in October of 2017, so just last year. We spent a year developing our curriculum, and we did a couple workshops during the summer of 2017. And this year we're doing 2 retreats. One will be for women, and then one will be for first responders. So police, medics, firefighters, who are dealing with persistent pain. And we're doing a couple workshops. We're working with another organization that is doing a retreat for female veterans. And we're going to be doing some pain workshops and movement stuff with them. And then another one for first responders. And then we're working with a pain management clinic in a hospital in Steamboat Springs to develop a pain workshop, which I'm really excited about and hope it starts to open some other doors, but just really excited that people are even open to having us come in and talk about these things. And like you, how yours is a patient-driven, that peer-to-peer kind of perspective, I think is so valuable, because we know what it's like to live with pain, and we know that how hard it is to make that transition out of that traditional model where you just think someone is going to fix you, to doing things on your own to kind of improve your own experience. And that we also know how that's worth it too.
I think what sells it, I think when you're when it's like peer-to-peer stuff, you know, it's like it's the group. Anybody in the group can't say to you, well, you don't know what it's like to live with pain, and we do.
Yeah.
But if you do this, you can get on with your life, but the pain levels drop. And I think that's the messages that we can give over are, I think, sometimes are more powerful than what a healthcare, unless the healthcare professional lives with pain as well. But if they don't, and I think because at the end of the day, all healthcare professionals are taught in this medical model where it's about what do we do to you rather than what can we work out together, you know. And I'm in this last sort of year, you know, I think a lot of when I said earlier on, I was a driving instructor, you know, a lot of teaching people to drive is a little bit like teaching people self-management, because, I mean, do you drive a car? Do you drive?
I do.
When you learn to drive, where did you sit, in the driving seat or the passenger seat?
The driver's seat.
Well, why was you in the driving seat?
So that I could learn how to drive.
But what happens is in pain management, is the healthcare professional puts us in the passenger seat.
Right.
And we become the tourist. You know, that I call a health tourist, where we just look around. Well, we go to physio, X-ray, MRI, orthopedic surgeon, rheumatology, or something. And and I say to her, when I'm teaching healthcare professionals, I say, keep people in the driving seat, because when we're driving the car, we're driving the agenda, we get better faster, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's such a powerful adjunct to any other kind of treatment that people are undergoing too. Like, it can be a standalone thing where people can just become empowered to live well with pain, or it can be an adjunct to any other type of therapy that they're doing, and it's going to make it more successful, because when they're home by themselves and they're flaring up, they'll have more tools and resources to be able to deal with that flare up without feeling like they're dependent on somebody else to fix it for them, or that they have to wait till they get to their appointment before they can get through this or figure out how to manage it and still, you know, engage with life as well. So I think that peer-to-peer format is really powerful, and that bringing people together who all live with pain. Like, one of the things that we heard from our first retreat was just how empowering it was to be in a room full of other people that understood you, without you having to explain yourself, without you having to defend yourself, that you just felt understood and can be yourself. One of our participants called it intensely relaxing, which I had never heard those two words paired together before. Intensely relaxing. But it's like just this huge weight is lifted off of you, and I don't think that the value of that can be overstated, because I think so often when we live with pain for a long time, we feel unheard and we feel dismissed, and that we're not believed, or at least just not understood. So to feel heard, to feel believed, to feel understood is really powerful.
That was when I went on my pain management program in '96. Dr. Charles Pyther, the guy who was running the course in London, he said that I always remember his words. He says, "We believe your pain." You know, up until then, you think you're going bonkers, like, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Joe, I think we need to do a few more of these, I think. Perhaps you know, the viewers can message either one of you or me about what things you would like us to discuss, etc. Like, you know, so I've really enjoyed it, and I was just thinking, we're bringing things to a close now. In a minute, I'll stop the recording, but we can carry on, etc., and finalise things and whatnot. But anyway, think of us over here. I know, you know, over here we're all, you know, worried about this east from the and it's I was watching on Essex weather, saying expecting 15 centimetres of snow, and I think it's only a couple of inches, like, you know. But where you are, it's like, you know, how big is, you know, deep is it? It's massive, isn't it? Like 6 feet deep. So anyway, catastrophising, I suppose. But Anyway, I wish you a good day, and we'll speak again soon. We'll do a few more of these videos as well.
Sounds great. Thanks so
Okay,
much, Pete.
take care.